And then, from there, I took a stop with DC United in 2017. Started here as the academy director, also coaching the U17s, because coaching is really, really my passion. First and foremost, I like the director part, but for me, it was I like being on the field. I like relationships. I like working with kids in particular and players. And then about 3 years ago, I got the opportunity within the club to move into Loudoun United, which is basically our reserve team for DC United here. And I've been here ever since. Don't really know how difficult this job is, being a second team in a tough league like the USL, until you really have a second team job, because you're always really balancing development, but you're also developing results, and you've got to get results because it is a professional league and you are playing some very, very good teams all across the league. So for us, first and foremost, it is a difficult thing, but you have to, I think in my role is like take a look at a lot of the small victories and some different things. So, one thing, in 2022, we had the fourth youngest team in the world of professional soccer. And to be honest with you, I didn't even really know that until someone tweeted at me. Stevie Grieve over in the UK tweeted at me and was like, "Hey, you got the fourth youngest team, great stuff." And I'm like, wow, I had no idea. So, that was pretty interesting as well. And, between, Nordisland and, Salzburg, you get some pretty big developmental teams in terms of give opportunities for our players to play against top teams from Honduras and El Salvador, which was tremendous. We had 7 shutouts in the season, and our goalkeeper was rewarded with a first team contract at the end. We had 6 other, players make academy debuts in a professional environment. And then we used, 38 players in different matches, so for us, pretty exciting, because not only are we trying to, bring our young players through. So whether it's a Jackson Hopkins, who, our manager, Wayne Rooney, thinks will be in the U.S. national team in 3 years, and whether it's a Jackson Hopkins or a Christian Fletcher or Matai or Ted Cudi Pietro, who are homegrown players that are coming through our academy that are getting opportunities. It could also be like a Sammy Gadiri or Luis Zamudio, who maybe it didn't work at other clubs for different reasons, whether it's system of play, style of play, whether it's depth in the depth chart. And what is mental performance? We're searching for consistency on a daily basis, which starts with, okay, the mentality of the player and his or her journey towards finding an 8 out of 10 in consistency. So one is, I've got to help them develop a pre-game and a pre-training routine. That can be both physical and mental. A lot of times, if it is physical, that should ideally make sure it's a mental situation as well. Okay, how do I tune in? What are my goals for the training session? How do I maximize my own growth? And how do I become better today than I was yesterday? We had 154 training opportunities this past season, plus 34 games, plus 6 or 7 preseason matches. That's almost 200 opportunities to become a better player. And if you do if you go through your routine every single time, 200 times, it becomes it sets you up for a mental and physical success to A, stay healthy, but B, to be more engaged. And what I started doing was, and there's some great resources out there. And, for one person I really like following is Dan Abrahams, who's a sports psychologist over in the UK and does tremendous work. But you can come up with this is what we did for our players, but it becomes a match script. What does your best match look like? What does it look like? But also, what did it feel like? Because all these players are talented. So they've all had really, really good performances and good matches. So, okay, what did that feel like? What did it look like? What was your mindset going into it? When you hit adversity, how did you come out of it? Who are role models that you might look up to positionally, throughout the world? And I use, in this patience for youthful mistakes, I guess I'll throw into it, because the reality is, by the time they get to DC United, with Wayne and all that, there really is no patience, because it's someone's job on the line. We went through 3 managers, and this is a great teaching lesson for players this year, because we went through 3 managers because results weren't great. So it's like jobs are on the line once you get to that point. So when a kid goes into a game, a Jackson Hopkins goes into a match with DC United, he has to be ready. And that's why for me, this was such an important piece of it, the roadmap of being a pro, because I'm really judged on, okay, how do players perform once they get there? And I always tell kids, okay, you signed your contract, but you haven't made it yet. Once you've started 30 something games in Major League Soccer, okay, then you've made it. Then we can then you can laugh and go over and like stuff like this. We had a kid, Kevin Paredes, who starts at Wolfsburg now, or started his first game this past weekend for Wolfsburg, and it's a tremendous testament to who he is as a young man and how he's grown to be a pro. But when you get to that level, when you get to the Major League Soccer level, there isn't much patience, unfortunately, for youth. That's where this Loudoun, and for me, is such a valuable piece of the puzzle. And that's on a weekly basis, and we've built it out where we track each week, so you can actually see a week by week where players maybe having good weeks, bad weeks, winning weeks, losing weeks, but we track every match they play throughout the season. And in this chart, you can see, some guys have played 116 games, some guys only 10. If they're on the lower end, like a 10 or a 3, those are typically first team guys that have come down that only train maybe 2 days before our game, or only maybe came down for one game. So we track first team players all the way through. But what we do is we base everything off a winning percentage. So even if you've only played 10 games, you can still win 60% of your games, which puts you in fifth over the year. But within the context, we're able to see, okay, well, if you played 74 games, that's a much bigger sample size than 10, especially when you're looking at signing a player for the first team. Like if Wayne calls and his assistant, great guy, Pete Shuttlesworth, who came with him from Derby, if they call and they're like, hey, Ryan, what do you think of so-and-so? Well, one of the first things I always go to is here. I go, well, in training, he's only won 36 out of 96 games. I go, so for me, that shows that either there's a lack of a competitiveness, a lack of consistency, or his training habits aren't really where they are. And this is something that we show on a weekly basis to the players. And we have an award at the end of each month, a gift card for a coffee shop. But it's like, okay, here's the winner of the month. Here's a winner of this. Here's who's won the most games this month. And we track it throughout the entire season. So it's a small thing, but the guys get into it because it is a competitive thing within each other. And I'm better than you this week, and you dropped 6 games this week, and here we go. But in terms of what we track, each week basically we'll go through the session before each training session. We'll go over the actual exercises and what we're looking to do and what we're looking to get out of it, and then we'll say this is also for a winner's point. So this could be anything from a possession activity to a crossing and finishing within teams to 11v11 to a small-sided tournament. But we try to have at least one significantly competitive action per training session. Back, what is that relationship? A lot of times, early on, Wayne wanted the wingers wide or the outside backs wider and the wingers inverted. Okay, no problem. But if there's times where it's vice versa, no issues as long as we're not in the same line. Then I went through the defensive principles very quickly, with the team. And then, you can kind of see in the last slide, in terms of possession, we went from, and this is where I try to keep it as simple as possible, but it's like we went from a team that was almost better without the ball in terms of when our first manager, Hernan, was here, he almost preferred the opposition to have it to regain possession high up in the field and create transition moments. That was really what we were built on. And Wayne wants the ball and wants to dominate the game with the ball. So we had to, okay, guys, the ball is now the most important thing in that we have. It can no longer be just given away. Where do we get width from? Okay, well, the opposite side. It can either be your outside back or your winger, one of the two. Okay, how do you get depth? Because depth wasn't something, especially from our center backs in the first 10, 15 games of the year, wasn't something that we even really thought about because we wanted to get forward, and even if we lost the ball, it was able to turn it back over and different things there. And then I just created some general rules. Okay, yes, we want to build out of the back, but when you have 4+ players pressing, it doesn't make sense to build out. We don't want to give goals away and give things away. Center backs are crucial to everything we do. And that was a big change as well. We want them to be better on the ball to help dictate, as you saw in the earlier slide. And that's why I kind of included those. runners in behind, how do we do it? Midfield rotation, that was something that was big with Wayne. How do we use our strength, which was my team and his team, the midfielders, and how do we have a rotation where we can dominate the central part of the field? So we kept it super simple in terms of where we are, and then we just layered on top of things, and it was like, okay, here's our starting point, and then we really taught through game to game. Okay, well, here's where we were. Here's what we did well. Here's what we did. Here's our spacing. Why is our spacing good versus why is our spacing bad here? Where is space? How do we get there? And then we did it based off opposition, and for me personally, this has been the biggest growing year as a coach that I've had, because of all of the shifting of coaches, game models, the way I think of the game, and how do I quickly build things into it, and it's really shaped the way I try to teach.